Hello everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're discussing Vail's marquee Utah mountain, Park City. Due to the insane extent of the ski area, this episode is split into 4 parts, with the first 2 discussing the mountain village side of the resort. In this part, we're continuing the discussion by investigating the Canyons Village area of the mountain. So with all that out of the way, let's continue in Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Park City. Now, we covered a lot of background information about the resort and region as a whole in Part A, so we'll keep this background section brief and specific only to Canyons. The Canyons Village is home to dozens of high-quality lodging, dining, and shopping options, effectively serving as its own town. However, even if you're staying in Canyons Village, I would still highly recommend heading into the town of Park City at least once just to experience it. Canyons itself as a ski area has some more concentrated areas and some more spread out areas. Due to how it is built around a residential area, navigating to and from certain spots can be a little bit difficult, despite signage on mountain being quite good. There are many flat spots and choke points you could accidentally get stuck in, and Canyon sees its fair share of lift lines as well. Throughout this and the next part of this episode, we're going to be discussing all of that and more so that you can make the most out of your time on the hill. Something important to note, as mentioned in Part A, Park City as a whole is not the greatest for beginners. This principle especially applies to canyons, so if you are a beginner, you're going to want to look at the mountain village side. Now, if you're not staying in Canyons Village and are driving in, for the time being, the parking experience is pretty convoluted. Currently, they're working on building a 5-level parking structure adjacent to the cabriolet. From what I understand, when fully complete, the top 2 levels will be day parking and the bottom will be a transit plaza, which would leave the middle 2 for vehicles of lodging guests and employees, I would have to assume. They haven't officially announced anything on whether it will be free or not, but I would say that given the route that other ski resorts have gone recently, it's a fair bet that parking in the new parking garage will be paid only and require reservations on peak days. Unfortunately, that means that the days of free parking at Canyons have pretty much gone by the wayside. For the time being, there are some paid lots further in the village, but when the structure is complete, those parking lots are supposed to be turned into land plots for developers to purchase. This leaves the far and away best option, taking transit. The High Valley Transit Agency runs a very consistent free bus network that can get you between Canyons Village and several park and rides, the town of Park City, and the Mountain Village base area. No shade to the town of Park City's transit, but I've found that the High Valley buses run much more consistently on time. As I recommended in Part A, downloading the transit app is very useful as you can type in your destination and it'll give you real-time bus tracking and step-by-step directions to get there. Now, this whole parking structure, where you'll end up whether you drive or take the bus, drops you off at the cabriolet. The cabriolet is a pretty unique and rare lift, as it is effectively an open-air gondola cabin that you stand in. This is something we'll go more into in a video in May, but the cabriolet actually turns using canted shifts, which is another piece that adds to its uniqueness. Because it is the link between this huge hub and the actual skiing lifts, the cabriolet can get decent buildup on peak days. Bear with it, and you'll end up in the village before you know it. Cabriolet lines are often the fastest moving of any lift in Park City. Now, once you make it into the village, you have 3 lift options. If you're coming from the cabriolet area, directly in front of you will be the Red Pine Gondola. If you walk just a minute or 2 to the other end of the beach, you'll have access to the Orange Bubble Express. If you're coming from the southern end of the village here by the Pendry Hotel, you'll have access to the Sunrise Gondola. It's not really practical to head to Sunrise from the cabriolet area and vice versa. This trail map is from the 24-25 season, so it doesn't yet have the Sunrise Gondola on it, but the gondola goes from the bottom of the old double chair here and runs up to the Red Pine Lodge, finishing right next to the Red Pine Gondola. For clarity, the gondola is replacing this double a few months after the recording of this video, so the lift you see on this map no longer exists. Because the Sunrise Gondola is tucked away in this different part of the village, it most likely won't see as long of lines as the other 2 lifts. Because it doesn't exist at the time of writing this video, we can't say exactly, but we predict that on peak days, the gondola will get around 15-minute lines, peaking around mid-morning. As is the case with all 3 base area lifts, past about 11:30, they really empty out. Over on the cabriolet side, Orange Bubbles lines tend to move quite a bit faster than the gondolas, and its location at the end of the village makes it less popular, so it is by far a better choice on peak days. The word bubble in the name refers to these protective coverings you can pull down to protect yourself from the elements on stormy days. Thus, there's no need to head to a gondola for shelter, as you can get shelter on this particular chairlift as well. Lift lines at Orange Bubble tend to be about 5 minutes shorter than Red Pines, and will probably be about 5 minutes longer than Sunrises. To return to the base area at the end of the day, you have a handful of options. The first is to download either of the 2 gondolas, depending on what part of the village you want to land at. If you're a beginner or low intermediate, I would highly recommend doing this. There's no shame in riding a gondola down. Another option is to ski all the way down this looker's right side via Willow Draw. Willow Draw is pretty flat, and while it's not the worst thing in the world, I much prefer riding down the gondola. Halfway down Willow Draw, you have to take a rope tow, which just compounds the annoyance. If you're up on a weekend or holiday, another option available will be to take the shortcut triple and ski down from there. We'll discuss all of these runs shortly. On weekdays, the shortcut triple does not operate. To access shortcut, you'll need to be on the skier's left side of the lodge building and ski down under the Red Pine gondola just a bit. The final option, and what I recommend if you want to ski instead of riding a gondola, is to make your way to the bottom of Tombstone and ride over and out. We'll discuss the Tombstone terrain in Part D. Over and Out and Shortcut are both pretty scenic lifts, bringing you up and down through the namesake canyons. From the top of Over and Out, you'll have to take the super crowded Raptor Way Trail for a little while, but it then quickly opens up to Retreat, Sunrise, and finally filters onto Doc's Run, all of which are much wider, nicer cruisers. As is with most ski resort base areas, the low elevation and high usage of these runs can lead to them becoming quite icy, so do be cautious. The Orange Bubble Express, referred to as OBX for short, has a mid-station at which you have the option to unload. If you unload at the OBX Mid-Station or come off of Shortcut, you'll have a pretty diverse set of terrain options. The primary run here is Doc's Run, which is a fantastic blue cruiser except for this section here, where it is legitimately uphill. While heading down the drain may seem like a decent alternative as it goes down the face instead of around, it quickly develops into an equally uphill road, so it's really a pick your poison scenario. From this area, you have access to Lynx and Eagle along with some decent tree skiing. This whole side stays well shaded and has much better snow than the runs on the opposing face, those being Silverado and Silverado Bull. Silverado specifically is more of a moguled gully, so it does fill in nicely, but it gets quite sunbaked. Silverado Bull gets absolutely blasted by the sun and thus tends to have some issues with coverage. On the opposite side of the bowl from Doc's Run is Lookout Ridge, and I would much sooner recommend this run than Doc's. Lookout Ridge is one of my personal favorite groomers in all of Park City. While it is low altitude, it has a pretty consistent fall line, is plenty long, and is normally devoid of other skiers. It dumps you onto Willow Draw, but is easy enough to conserve enough speed to get back to OBX without having to push or skate. All the way at the bottom of Doc's Run here, Sixes and Outlaw are good places to get some mellow bump laps, although beware the conditions down here aren't always the best for off-piste. Up at that same summit is the Lookout Cabin restaurant, which is a full-service restaurant that has, among many other things, fondue. If you're looking to slow it down for a few hours, this is a great place to go, but if you want a quicker cafeteria-style lunch, head to either Red Pine Lodge or Sun Lodge. I personally prefer Sun Lodge as it's a bit out of the way, whereas Red Pine is right at the center of all the action, so it's a lot busier. Sun Lodge is located above the bottom of the Sun Peak Express, so to access it from Lookout Cabin, you'll want either Boomer or Broken Arrow. Boomer is basically a road the whole way around, while Broken Arrow cuts the corner. Grizzly is sometimes groomed, and when it is, it's a fantastic steep cruiser. G-Force and Super Fury aren't crazy long, but they're real steep and feature big ol' moguls. They're true leg burners, and a great way to warm up before heading up to the steeps, if that's the style of skiing you like. Black Hole keeps pretty good snow, but I found better tree skiing elsewhere. You can't get to Sun Peak from Black Hole or anything further down, so keep that in mind. Badlands is very similar to G-Force and Super Fury, while Tower and Diablo are more sun-exposed, and as such, tend to have worse snow conditions. Arrowhead isn't groomed all that often, but typically doesn't get moguls. The lower half of Arrowhead turns into a road, but it's not too flat. Arrowhead via OBX and Lookout is the fastest way to Condor, which is our next discussion point. The Super Condor Express Quad doesn't have the biggest capacity in the world, but it's tucked in this corner of the resort and typically doesn't get too bad of a build-up. Apex Ridge is a favorite of ski school instructors at Park City, and that's for a reason. As far as blue cruisers go, Apex has gotta be one of, if not the single longest and straightest you can find. It is a little bit steep for a blue, but you can scope it from the lift, and if it looks too difficult, you can take the significantly milder BOA. Just beware that lower BOA can get pretty flat and slow in spots, and there are lots of high-level skiers flowing down from these blacks all throughout it. Along this northern side of the ridge, you start with Condor Woods, which is a pretty standard, albeit steep, glade area. Beware that this flows into Canis Lupus, which is the longest natural gully at Park City. It's quite steep and gets narrow in some spots, and on hard pack days it can feel a little bit hard to control yourself. Once you enter Canis, you're pretty committed, as there's only one emergency exit about halfway down. On softer days, however, it's loads of fun, and a run I would absolutely recommend. Down below that area, you have Upland and Kestrel, which both get grooming every couple days, and when either is groomed, they're one of the best cruisers in canyons. Wedged between them is Devil's Friend, home to some of the biggest moguls you'll find at Park City. This is a super fun run, and if you're looking for one of the most trying leg burners, this is absolutely the place for you. Down below, you've got Thrasher, which is a much wider mogul face, and Rendezvous Ridge, which gets lots of sun exposure. Between Apex and Rendezvous is a small bowl area with bumps and small thickets of brush. Over on the other side of the ridge are some steeper, wilder mogul runs. Some of these run down small ridges, some in gullies, and some even offer a bit of tree skiing. However, these runs phase straight south, meaning they don't hold snow well at all and are only truly good on a few days of the season. Crisscrossing through is the Easy Street Catwalk, which is one of the flattest roads at canyons. That statement includes all of its variations down here. If you're looking to get to the Sun Lodge or Sun Peak lift, however, you will have to suffer through it. The only other way to escape Super Condor is through Willow Draw. Neither of these exits are great, so if you're going to lap Condor, hit it all in one chunk rather than in several spurts. That way you only have to deal with these exits once. In the spring, moose love to frequent the bushes in the lower unskiable part of this side of the ridge, so keep an eye out on the ride up. Off the top of the Condor, you have the option to take a 20 to 30 minute hike up Murdock Peak. This hike is grueling, but the views you'll get at the top are absolutely insane. The terrain, however, isn't really. For the most part, you just have this big open face with some aspens throughout. There are a few cliffs and whatnot if you get lucky or search real hard, but in all honesty, you don't do this hike for the terrain, you do the hike for the views. As such, it's a one and done deal for me. Wedged between OBX and Condor is the Sun Peak Express. Similarly to Condor, it has a pretty low capacity but doesn't get too busy. This time, rather than due to its location, it's because Sun Peak doesn't really serve as a lapping lift and is more of just a transit lift to get between those two aforementioned zones and the Red Pine Lodge area. As far as the lapping runs go, Echo and Flume make a fantastic long blue cruiser. However, this run gets quite busy. Eclipse doesn't get groomed each night, but gets it enough not to get moguls. When it is groomed, it's a must hit for all intermediates. Massacre is straight as an arrow and fairly steep. It and Mineshaft are a pair of good mogul runs, although I'm not the biggest fan of either because they require an annoying run out to get back to Sun Peak along the blue roads we discussed earlier. The same can be said for these trees. Good skiing, not worth the egress pain. Off the top of the lift, if you turn left, you'll be headed down Eclipse. You can cut across along the ridgeline by the bottom of the park to escape to Echo before Eclipse gets steep, but beware this cut across isn't groomed. To get to Echo more easily, take Upper Mainline. Upper Mainline can be flat in spots, but it's far from the worst. Transitions is the only terrain park on the canyon side, and is quite a long trail with a large variety of features throughout the duration of it. Past Orange Bubble, you'll be funneled onto Mainline, which is pretty flat for a while before having one final drop into the Red Pine Lodge area. This area gets pretty busy, so ski with caution. Another option you have, if Mainline is too busy for you, is to enter the High Meadow beginner area. However, if you're going to do this, understand the area you're going into and the people that are going to be there, and ski it accordingly. Nobody likes someone flying past beginners when there's a segregated blue that goes to the same place. Now, within the beginner area, Mellow Moose is the main super wide area. There's plenty of space here for everyone to have their own lane, and it makes for a truly fantastic learning experience. For some variety, you can head into the woods along Alley Cat, which is a fun little winding road. You can also take the Hidden Bear cat track on the opposite side, but beware that this is where a lot of the blacks of the Saddleback pod will flow onto. Now, this High Meadow area is the only place with greens in all of Canyons, and as such, High Meadow can get some of the longest lift lines in all of Park City. There's not much you can do about it, but just be prepared. Right next to High Meadow is the Saddleback Express Quad. Since it's right in the center of everything, it would make sense that it's consistently busy, but Saddleback is actually typically pretty quiet, at least when compared to the base area lifts High Meadow and Tombstone. The pod in general mostly consists of some of the easiest blues in all of Park City. Over on the looker's right side, Painted Horse is pretty flat, while Cocopelli undulates a little bit. Pine Draw has the best snow of the three, but is also pretty narrow compared to the other two. It has a more consistent pitch than the other two as well. On the looker's left side is Snow Dancer, which is by far the easiest blue you'll find at Park City. When you're confident on greens and ready to try a blue, this is where to go. It does have a steeper pitch right at the bottom, but this can be bypassed by taking Badger's Bypass into the High Meadow zone. I would only recommend taking Badger's from this lower intersection, however, as its upper section gets quite crowded and is a little steep. This Flying Salmon run is supposedly an adventure run, but in my opinion, it's just an avoid at all cost run. It is genuinely uphill to get to, and there's no reward for your effort, just a flat road through the forest. Over on the other side, you have a pair of natural gullies in Tunnel of Fun and Hurricane Alley. Both are pretty mellow and are great places to take the kids. Tunnel of Fun is much more popular, is narrower, and is shorter, so I much prefer Hurricane Alley. Tunnel of Fun is accessed on the skier's right of Pine Draw, while you can access Hurricane Alley by dropping off the skier's left side of Kokopelli or the skier's right of Painted Horse at any point. Before going into a natural gully, you should be fully confident in making quick decisions, stopping and turning on blue slopes. All of these blues on the looker's right side of the pod dump you onto mainline, with the option of heading into the high meadow area. In between the blues are a series of pretty serious blacks. This entire set of runs from Ecstasy to Shadows appears to be tree skiing on the map, but it's more of a big mogulled face with some short patches of trees thrown in here and there. This can all be accessed from Elk Ridge, which is a mogul run that goes down the ridgeline until turning into a small face that drops you onto Hidden Bear. Silver Horse is another mogul run, going straight under the lift until it meets Flying Salmon. You also have the option after the first steep pitch to turn right into a treed gully, which can be pretty fun. Wapiti is a pretty small bowl, also typically bumped up, that takes you from Elk Ridge down to Silver Horse and Flying Salmon. The best single black run in the whole pod is the Aspens, which is exactly what it sounds like. The aesthetic of cruising through a forest of aspens, thin enough to ski fast but not too sparse not to feel like tree skiing, just can't be beat. Alright, that about wraps it up for part C of this Insider's Guide. We'll pick up at the Red Pine Lodge in part D and wrap up our discussion of Park City from there. As always, please put any questions down below. Thank you all for watching. All my love, I'm out.